What up everybody, it's ipadbeatmaking.com here today to talk about a game-changing update to the game-changing interface that is the Apogee Symphony desktop, which is the most incredible two-channel interface that an iOS user can get their hands on. Now its quality is incredible and I've really had a blast recording songs through it, but always felt a bit played from the time of purchase because we were promised a suite of plugins that would be natively hosted on the Symphony desktop itself. This nearly 2-year timeline since the Symphony desktop was first announced hasn't been easy to be patient through, especially with the erratic price changes and desktop plugins sometimes being a small price more in a bundle, sometimes being free, and sometimes being full price, and sometimes being 50% off with the purchase of a Symphony desktop. But putting all that to the side, the Apogee Effects plugins can now be hosted directly on the Symphony desktop itself. And they've got a lot of plugins which are perfect for all types of vocal recording artists, as well as those that play instruments. I don't think there's anything here to disappoint. But we're gonna read from the Apogee press release. It says Apogee Electronics February 2022, software release for Symphony Desktop delivers the Mod EQ6, Mod Comp, and Opto 3A plugins to the hardware DSP on Symphony Desktop. You can now use and control the complete suite of Apogee 6 hardware DSP dual path plugins directly from the touch screen. Symphony Desktop is the only audio interface that lets you record, monitor, mix, and master using the Apogee hardware DSP on your interface and the same native plugins in your DAW. No audio interface hardware required. Now, of course, this is true for desktop users, but for iOS users, it's a bit different, and we'll get to that later. But let's go over what you get with the Symphony desktop. You get hybrid DSP native plugins, superior workflow for recording, monitoring, and mixing. Keep in mind that when you do buy the Symphony desktop, you do not get the desktop software plugins for free. I know it sounds a bit confusing, but they're two different formats. You get the plugins hosted directly on the device itself, which are kind of like using hardware, and then you can go with another purchase and get those exact same plugins that are hosted by your Mac or PC. For iOS users, you're not going to get any plugins as it currently stands that are able to be hosted on the iOS device. You instead will be hosting those plugins on the Symphony desktop itself, kind of like using external hardware before it hits the computer. That's how I would really look at this. But anyways, let's go over the 6 hardware DSP plugins that are included with the Symphony desktop. First, you've got the ECS channel strip, which is the EQ compression and saturation. And this was really there for as long as I've known about the device. I remember seeing this plugin. This was really kind of their day one, I think, plugin that was on here. Honestly, I didn't expect to really like it, but I was really surprised that I did. I actually liked what it did to my vocals. It had a really cool sound. It added some nice saturation. And I'm gonna read the description here. It says, whether you're recording basic tracks or adding the final touches on your mix, the Symphony ECS channel strip offers simple but comprehensive EQ, compression, and saturation for enhancing your tracks with minimum fuss and maximum results. The channel strip's EQ is based on vintage 1970s hardware EQ that's simple but potent, so you can dial in your sound with ease. Switch the high-pass filter to the compressor sidechain for aggressive compression without pumping. The compressor has parameters that are tuned by the legendary mixer Bob Clearmountain. The compressor offers foolproof gain reduction with just the essential controls. Parallel compression is easy using the included mix knob. And next up, we've got the Pultec EQP-1A, and this precisely recreates the Pultec EQP-1A's unique characteristics, broad EQ curves to gently but powerfully shape your sounds while maintaining their integrity, interaction of bands to create characteristic EQ curves used by engineers for decades, circuit nonlinearities to add the magic that hardware units are renowned for, and it's developed with Pulse Technologies, the current manufacturer of hardware Pultec EQs. And then we've got another Pultec, the MEQ-5. The Apogee Pultec MEQ-5 mid-range equalizer plugin precisely recreates the original hardware to scope critical mid-range frequencies with precision and warmth. And again, it's developed with Pulse Technology, so you know that it is official from the manufacturer and it has their stamp of approval. And next up, we've got the Opto 3A, a vintage compressor slash limiter, and this is the one I'm really excited about. I really love the sound of the LA 3A style compressors, and I'm actually using that on this vocal right now because I wanted to see what it would sound like as I'm trying to do some voiceover stuff. So I'm going through an RE20 microphone, which is a dynamic, straight into the Symphony desktop, and I'm using the Opto 3A compressor in real time as the chain, recording into an iOS device right now. So I won't be adding any extra plugins after the fact to this. I've got an EQ in front of this, which I will get to in a minute, but that's it. So what you're hearing is direct from the Symphony. So if you're wondering what it sounds like, there it is. It's an optical compressor slash limiter. It reproduces the reactive compression characteristics of modeled hardware, extended HF emphasis functionality, sidechain HP filter, dry effects mix. And basically this is really what sold it for me, is this specific plugin before getting into the iPad to mix. So if I could use this in the same nature as people use hardware, that would be ideal, and that is what makes the Symphony so special. So now we've got the Mod EQ6, which I have just engaged right now, and this is in front of the compressor so you can kind of hear all those two sound together. And it is a 6-band parametric EQ. It's got a visual user interface, spectrum analyzer, band solo, and proportional slash constant Q. Keep in mind, I'm looking at the device right now and I do not see any kind of spectrum analyzation going on, any visual user interface with the waveforms dancing. So that is probably exclusive to the plugin on the desktop, and it is probably not applicable for the Symphony desktop itself, but maybe I'm doing something wrong or I don't have it engaged. So that's something that I will explore later. I just installed the software on here, so definitely a lot I don't know about it yet. And finally, we've got the Mod Comp, which is a modern visual compressor slash limiter, and it is a modern compressor visual user interface, which may or may not actually work on the Symphony desktop. I have not tried that plugin yet. It's got 3 selectable styles: punch, easy, and level, 2-band sidechain EQ, auto makeup, and dry effects mix. So that is the suite of the Apogee plugins that you get with the Symphony desktop that can be hosted on board. Now, what does this mean for iOS users? Well, although we won't have access to the dual path workflow like computer users or AUV3s of Apogee's plugins, which would be great. And if you're listening, Apogee, please give us iOS compatible AUV3s of your plugins. We do have access to them directly on the Symphony desktop itself. And what this means is that iOS users will get a very unique hybrid style workflow where you can have your audio source run through an EQ and a compressor before it hits the iPad or the iPhone. And this solves the problem of needing to use an iOS device's resources with plugins as you're tracking, and it really puts an analog style workflow in a compact desktop interface. What's also great is that you can choose to print the effects directly to the recording in real time, or simply monitor through the effects to inspire a good performance because you feel like you're going through a great recording chain in terms of the plugins and effects, but it doesn't actually print the effects to your audio, and this leaves your recorded audio untouched and ready to be mixed at a later time, which is what some people prefer. I would recommend a workflow like that for people who aren't the most savvy with respect to setting their levels and having their plugins all set up, but you come up with a sound that you feel like inspires the best performance. And then when you get it into the DAW, you can send it off to get mixed for real with just the untouched audio, or you can mix it at a later time. So being able to have that as an option is incredible. And you also get one of 3 microphone preamps, which you can select, and they all sound very unique from each other and really cover all different genres and styles. So it is an incredible device that really does feel like it's so much more than just this thing on the desktop. It's, you know, most interfaces, it's no frills. You just plug your mic in, set the level, you're done. With this, it's so interactive. It's almost like having another iPad or iPhone or even a computer where you're able to host your plugins. It just feels really pro. So really enjoy the Symphony desktop. Now, as far as cons, I really wish that we could save our plugin presets. This is a pretty big omission for an otherwise nearly perfect device. But being able to save plugin presets would really speed up workflows and allow us to be able to recall some of our favorite settings for various sources. Especially with it being a 2-channel device, it's likely you'll constantly be using these same 2 channels to record different people or instruments. So Apogee, if you're listening, please give us user-savable presets, and it'd also be cool to be able to share them like you can with most other plugins. So yeah, this is an incredible update, but before I get out of here, I want to know, what is your take on the Symphony desktop? What is your take on Apogee as a whole? Let me know in the comment section down below. Have you used one? Are you grabbing one? If so, what kind of music are you making? Post some links to your music that you've made using the Symphony desktop. I really want to hear your experiences and some of your creations that you've made with this device. With that being said, I'm about to get out of here. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to hit the like button as well as the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss out on the latest news, tips, tricks, sales, beats, reviews, updates, and more. It's ipadbeatmaking.com. Peace.